Welcome back, boys and girls. We are going to read Worms at Work. This is our paired text. This goes with our Raising Raisins story. So let's read Worms at Work. This is an expository text. It's going to tell us how to do something. And we have some text features on this page. Can you identify some of those text features? If you said that there is a heading and bullet points, you are correct. Bullet points usually make a list. In this case, it's going to tell us how to do something in order. Okay, so let's read. Did you know that people all over the world keep worms to change their garbage into rich soil called compost? Worms eat food scraps. 2 pounds of worms can eat a pound of garbage every day. That's a lot of trash. Keeping worms is easy. It can also be a lot of fun. And while you're having fun taking care of the worms, you're also helping the environment by recycling trash into compost for houseplants and gardens. Here's what you need to do. You will need red worms, also called red wigglers. And then over here, there's a little information box that the author gave you. It says you can start with a few as 50 to 100 worms, but more worm will eat more garbage. Some garden stores sell worms by the pound. 1 pound of worms contains 1,000 to 1,500 worms. Wow, that's a lot. You will need a large plastic container about 12 inches deep, plastic bag or loose cover for the container, newspaper leaves and soil to make the bedding, water, food scraps. Here's another text box from the author that we're going to read. It talks about food scraps. Feeding dues. Yes, eggshells, coffee grounds, and used tea bags, cooked rice, pasta or potatoes, cereal, fruits, and vegetable peelings, and bread. So those are all the things you can use as food scraps. Feeding don'ts. No. Meat, fish, dairy products. Worms would eat these, but they may make the worm bin smell bad and attract rats and flies. Oh, wow. You don't want rats and flies, do you? So there was a lot of information there. The author is trying to tell you what you will need to set up your compost bin. Making your worm bin. Prepare the container. Poke small holes through the bottom of the container. Prepare the bedding. Fill the container about 3/4 full with a small piece of torn newspaper. Do not use any colored or shiny newspaper. Add about a handful of soil. You can put in some dead leaves too if you like. Pour water on the bedding. Make sure all the bedding is damp but not soaking wet. Add the worms. Gently move the worms into their new home. Feeding the worms. Bury the food scraps in the bedding. Cover the bin. Make sure the air can still move in and around the bin. So that's how you make your worm bin. That's how you're going to make your compost pile. Maintaining your worm bin. Keep the bedding moist and make sure the bedding does not dry out. Feed the worms. Pay attention to how much the worms are eating. If they are not eating at all, if they're not eating all the scraps, feed them less. Harvest the compost. Worms eat their bedding as well as their food. When the bedding is mostly gone, push what's left to one side and add fresh, damp bedding to the other side. Bury the food scraps in the new bedding. The worms will move to the food so you can harvest the compost without taking all the worms with it. Use the compost. Compost helps plants grow better. Add it to the potted houseplants or to your outdoor flower vegetable garden. Look, boys and girls, on this page, the author used bullet points, but they numbered them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And over here for maintaining your worm bin, the author used bullet points and numbered those also. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the author is telling you how to do things in steps. Can you think of the steps it takes to raise a raisin? Yes, the author did use steps in her Raise a Raisin story, didn't they? Today I want you to write, you're going to rewrite how do you raise a raisin in the format of Worms at Work. So you're going to put things in order. Step 1, step 2. You're going to summarize and explain how to make raisins in 5 steps. So boys and girls, you're going to kind of use this format, and you're going to tell me how to make a raisin in just 5 steps. Here's the story about raising a raisin, and I only gave you the pages with the steps for how to raise a raisin. So let's look at this page right here, and let's see if we can find the first step to making a raisin. I'm going to scan through here. How long do raisins take to grow? Remember, this is the poem part of the story. It takes at least 3 years until the vines are old enough for the first crop of raisins. That's 26,280 hours. Wow. I'm going to go over to some more informational parts because here's the poem part. When the grapes are ready, skilled grape pickers snag the grape clusters from the vines using a sharp vine cutter. Ooh. Okay, so what is the first step? Yeah, the raisins have to get ripe, and then skilled grape pickers snag the clusters from the vines using a sharp vine cutter. Okay, so now I need to use my own words, and I'm going to go to my step 1 page. And I'm going to use my own words, and I am going to, let's see if I can move that over, and then move there we go. Let's see if I can move the screen back over too. There we go. Okay, so now I have my step 1 page, how to make a raisin, and I wrote first, because I'm going to use some transition words today. First, when the grapes are ripe, skilled workers cut the grapes in clusters off the vine. They use a sharp tool called a vine cutter. So boys and girls, I have the first step on how to make a raisin right there. And I got my information from the text, didn't I? But I put it in my own words and I used a transition word. What else did I use in my answer? Complete sentences. Yes, I did. I used a transition word first, comma. I ended it in a period for my sentence. I had 2 sentences in this answer. The next one started with a capital letter and ended with a period. I will be looking for that, boys and girls. Your answers have to contain a transition word, and they need to be in complete sentences, okay? Next page says step 2. Now, boys and girls, I put each step on a page, but let's look at it. Did I fill up all those lines? No. Some steps may take longer. You may need all the lines, and some steps may be shorter. Step 2. I'm going to go back up to my text. This page had step 1. Let's go to the next page. The grape clusters are laid on brown paper trays on the ground between the grapevine rows. This is called laying the grapes down. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Most raisin growers plant the vineyards in east to west rows. This way, grapes drying between the rows receive the most sun. Okay, so the next step is that they actually put these clusters on brown paper trays in the rows of the vines, right? That's what they're saying they do. So I need to use what? A transition word. I'm going to say next. And what could I say? Next. Oh. The workers do what, boys and girls? Yes, they lay the clusters on the ground on paper trays between the rows, right? That would be the next step. So I'm going to let you put that in your own words. Remember your transition word. Remember the period at the end of your sentence. It needs to tell about the second step. Then you're going to move on to step 3. Well, I'm going to go back up here. I read this page and I got the second step, so I should probably keep reading to find the third. Raisins bake in the sun for about 2 to 3 weeks. Then the paper trays are rolled into bundles that look like a burrito and are left in the field for a few more days to make sure that all the raisins are dry. So what could you say that step is? Yes, they lay there for about 2 or 3 weeks and then they're rolled into bundles and left to dry some more, aren't they? So I'm going to go to step 3 and I'm going to say, then after a few weeks, I can say the brown paper trays are folded up into bundles with the raisins still in there. The bundles are left to dry a little while longer. Okay, so that is what they're doing. I could say the bundles of raisins are left to dry a little while longer. And I am going to turn that all green so it's easier to read, but let's read it together. Then, after a few weeks, brown paper trays are folded up into bundles with the raisins still in there. The bundles or raisins are left to dry a little while longer. Okay, so then you move on to step 4. What happens after that? There's my transition word. After that, tell me what happens. And then finally, the raisins get stored and washed by workers. The workers pick off any stems before the raisins get packaged in boxes and bags. And I got that from the last page of my reading. It told me all about the workers boxing them up. So boys and girls, your job is to use that story, and you're going to tell me how to make a raisin in just 5 steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And I'm looking for, this is what you're going to be graded on, that you have transition words in your sentences. First, then, next, after that, finally. And you can use those words or you can use other transition words. That each step is summarized in your own words, just like I did in the examples. But the key information is still there, okay? Your sentence structure will be graded. You have capital letters at the beginning of your sentences and punctuation at the end, and each step is complete. So boys and girls, after I tally this up, it'll be worth 10 points. All right? So boys and girls, that is what you are doing today for reading. Read through Worms at Work. You're going to rewrite How Do You Raise a Raisin in the format of Worms at Work, summarize and explain how to make a raisin in 5 steps. Refresh your memory with the raisin story. I gave you the pages right there. And then step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and don't forget what you're graded on. when you load your papers today, you will get all these papers with that. Okay? All right. Happy reading, and I can't wait to read your summaries.